Hello, my name is Piero Giorgio. I am the author of this book, Survive the Economic Collapse. Today, I wanted to talk to you about media misinformation, and I would like to take as an example Serbia. Now, as you know, if you follow my videos and if you read my books, I am passionate about history. And one of the histories that are, in my opinion, the founding element of Europe's 20th century is, of course, World War I. And everybody knows, or should know, that one of the triggers is not the only cause, but one of the triggers of World War I was the shooting of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo in 1914. And obviously, that region, with the Ottoman Empire coming in and coming out throughout the last 1,000 years, if you want, and of course with the creation of the Christian kingdom and country of Serbia in that border region between the Ottomans coming in after the fall of the Byzantium Empire, and of course the Austrian-Hungary Empire growing, has always been very, very interesting. And especially around World War I, Serbia was a very interesting country because it was a country that was portrayed in the Western media. And I do own quite a lot of old books and magazines of the times of the World War I, antique magazines and antique books that show how in France, in England, of course, Serbia was shown as, of course, an ally, which was part of the Entente against the Central Powers. There was no Axis then. There was Central Powers, Germany, Austria, and the Ottoman Empire, and then also Bulgaria. And of course, Serbia was part of this war and was shown, obviously, in a very positive light. And Serbia suffered a lot through World War I. Now, after World War I, the creation of the Kingdom of Yugoslavia definitely was kept in good lights of the media. And even during the very terrible, of course, phases of World War II, where Germany and Italy invaded, of course, Yugoslavia, that actually collapsed because of the tensions of the different nationalities and different political aspiration of these nationalities. Well, because of the resistance, the glorious and very, very difficult resistance, of course, as you may or may not know, Yugoslavia was one of the few countries who liberated themselves almost alone against Nazi occupation and fascist occupation. And of course, under the leadership of Tito, Yugoslavia became a free and independent country, of course socialist, but certainly not under the boot of Stalin's Soviet Union, and continued throughout in this Cold War between Eastern Bloc and Western democracies, was a kind of non-aligned and certainly not sided either with the Eastern Bloc, while socialist, nor with the Western powers. And so it's still kept, it was kept in the very good light in terms of media. Now, in the early 90s, as the Soviet bloc collapsed, and as I mentioned and explained some of that in my books, because it's a very interesting experience for us all to learn how it happened and how people can cope. And I believe that in a very similar way, the Western world is going to collapse like the Soviet Union. Certainly the American empire will collapse like the Soviet Union. What was very interesting is that as Yugoslavia started to show sign of secessions and collapse with hyperinflation, and eventually led to the partition of the country with Slovenia and then Croatia, and then of course Bosnia splitting up, suddenly in the media, in the Western media, where I was living, of course I'm living in Switzerland, I was living in Switzerland at the time, and I was either a student or a young professional, I could see the media portrayal of Serbia was suddenly completely different. It was not anymore the heroic people fighting against Austria, or the independent, or fighting against fascism and Nazism, or the independent country in the Balkans. Suddenly, it was evil communist dictators who want to slaughter and kill everyone else that is not of their nationality. And so they reverted completely some of the positions. And I don't deny that a lot of people in Serbia wanted to live in a sort of greater Serbia, or a country that included all the Serbian or Serbian-speaking people of the former Yugoslav republics. Like there are some areas which are now part of Croatia, which have been ethnically cleansed by Croatians, and there have been areas within Bosnia which have been ethnically cleansed of Serbian, and of course there are parts today of Bosnia and Herzegovina who are majority full of Serbians, which have not been able or not been allowed to join Serbia. And I will go into Kosovo a little bit later. But certainly at that point, the media, with a strong push from United States, obviously, but also Germany, completely reverted that. And I remember at the time, my father was a manager in a very large company, was a top manager in a very large company in Europe, American company. And I remember that he was receiving videotapes from Croatian people. How did they get his name? Probably through the United States. And those videos showed pictures. I remember there was the music of Mozart's Requiem. And there were a lot of pictures of dead people, slaughtered civilians, videos of war, of bombings, and artillery shells exploding and things like that in the cities. And it was at the time of the Battle of Vukovar. And of course they were saying, look at the evil beasts of Serbians killing our people and so on. Please help, give us money and so on, and help the cause of Croatia and so on. And already then it started, I felt fishy in the sense that, images can be manipulated. You can show unfortunate pictures or movies of war and of killed civilians. No one is there to know who they are, who killed them. But if you say that they have been killed by someone, well, you're led to believe that that someone did the killing, but there's not been an inquiry. We don't know. So the selective part of the media on Serbia was extremely, already at the time, it felt very fishy. But, in the West, our media are not free. Our journalists do not necessarily do the job of journalists. They are paid, they are employees. So they inquired on what was interesting to inquire. And, or what they thought was, when you think that someone did something, you will inquire not with an open mind, but you will inquire and you will try to find anything that will prove your theory, in that case, that Serbians were the ones perpetrating all the mass murders. And of course, now we know that while there's been atrocities committed by everyone, and unfortunately this is war, and this is why we should avoid wars at any cost all the time, the majority of atrocity were done by the other side. And the majority of people who've been ethnically cleansed were Serbians. Now, why is this interesting is that, of course, that it got repeated again in 1999 with the attack of NATO on Serbia. And at that time, I remember that I was already very skeptical. And while the war in Bosnia was not really my concern, I was so busy at the time with my career and work. However, in 1999, a bit older, I started to see and said, hold on a second, the Serbians are not killing Kosovars. You do not have a place where you have 10% of the people killing 90% of the others. This just does not make sense. And in fact, as it was seen, it was mostly people of Albanian culture and language who were actually attacking farms and people of Serbian ancestry and language who were living in Kosovo. And of course, the Western media were manipulated, or were they guilty of playing into that manipulation, and that's what I think, into making NATO bomb Serbia, because of course people were already thinking that because Serbians were so evil during the civil wars and the partition of Yugoslavia, therefore they had to be taught another lesson, a bit like Germans in World War II in a way, but of course it's a different story. So it was very interesting, and why I'm saying this is that understanding the manipulation of the media has been, first of all for me, a very important part of waking up. And eventually that led to write my book and change my life, to wake up to try to understand what is the real situation of the world. And the real situation of the world, as you know if you read the books, is that the media tell a story of everything is going to be fine, don't worry, the world will continue the way it is, just keep spending and keep doing what we tell you. Whereas in reality, especially in the Western world, that is the United States and Western Europe, the economies are dead. They're not even fragile, they're already dead, and they will collapse. And they're on the brink of collapsing. And they only keep not collapsing because the media keeps people believing that they have to keep working and keep doing a job. And if the lifestyle and wealth keeps decreasing and keeps being destroyed day after day, year after year, well, it's okay, don't worry, there is a recovery around the corner. And after so many corners, there's no recovery. But the media play the game. And the media are part of the war machine against European people, against American people, against the people of the world. And, well, not all, but most of the people of the world. And they will use any subterfuge, they will use any ways, they will tell all the lies that are possible. And some of the journalists, they are convinced that they are doing the truth and they're doing their journalist job, whereas in fact, it's obvious that they are part of the lying machine, they're part of the propaganda. And you see the Western world, United States and Western Europe, they are becoming the Soviet Union. You have the USSA, and of course you have, as I coined this sentence in my book, the European Union is the United Republics and Kingdoms of Soviet Socialist Europe. That's what it has become. And therefore, like in the Soviet system, you have oligarchs who own most of the businesses, including the media, and therefore decide the agenda. You have a nomenclatura of politicians and apparatchiks and the media and the journalists who actually play and make believe a certain ideology: liberal markets, open borders, bring immigration, destroy culture, destroy the roots, make everyone dependent of the state, make everyone dependent of the businesses. And below there is the people who so far are entertained by mass media and TV, who are fed by a system of collapsing economy, but also food stamps and welfare. And you have and some people are starting to understand that. But all this system is going to collapse because it is based on energy that is going to be disappearing, as I explained in my book. There's not going to be cheap oil for a long time. And natural resources are disappearing. And the social tensions and contradictions of the societies will bring it to a collapse. The only difference with Soviet Union, of course, is that European and American, and actually the world's large cities and people who live in them, they're not resilient. They're not able to survive such a collapse of such a scale of the global economy. So this is why I think that all of you who are interested about how history usually is tragic and brings death and destruction on most people within cycles, if you want to understand how you will survive in the next cycle, well, of course I have to tell you, read my book. But I also have to tell you, study the history of Serbia. It is, and of course, by extension, Yugoslavia, because the lessons that we can learn, first of all, on how it came to collapse at different times, how these crises grew up and then exploded, and of course, how the people survived and what they had to do to survive, and in some cases this was extremely tragic story. Well, this is interesting for all of us, and we can learn from that. So, to all the Serbian friends who listen to me, first of all, I'd like to say that you are in the right of history. You are the ones who are maybe victims, but certainly you have to know that you have been correct, and you have been maybe unjustly condemned by the world, but you are the ones who are in the truth. So keep strong and keep fighting for freedom and for justice, because there's not many people who are doing that across the world, and certainly there are not many people in the sense of groups of people, a sense of nations, of the sense of even ethnicities that fight strong for that. And you are one of the very few in the world. So you have my support and you have my friendship as a lone individual Swiss guy, but certainly Switzerland also played a bit dirty in the Yugoslav and especially in the Kosovo situation. I'm not saying I dislike other people, but certainly Serbians have my sympathy. So with that, I hope that I can come to Serbia one of these days soon. Maybe do a conference. Maybe have my books, certainly my first, or maybe the other books I've wrote, translated into Serbian. But certainly, keep strong, keep fighting, and don't leave the world put you down. Take care. Ciao.